Just to give Greg some background, Hoon, I met him in CrossFit, and I was doing CrossFit for several years. And Hoon was in the class. I noticed he was doing this startup. And that's really what kicked off wanting to talk to you. I feel like it's an inspiration for me to see you build this awesome app.
So I guess one place where I can start is sort of like the motivation for what I'm doing right now. A long time ago, I graduated from college in 2003, which is almost 20 years ago. Back then, my ambitions were find a good paying job, live a comfortable life, enjoy life. And I don't know if I knew any better, but that was sort of my goal. And I think that was sort of instilled in me by my parents. My parents grew up, they had a really hard life, everything they had to earn. And, my dad came here to the US, $100 in his pocket. And I think for him, my mom's dreams were that their kids live a good life and a comfortable life, one that's much better than what they did. And so that was sort of the message that I grew up with. After college, I went to Microsoft for about 5 years. And Microsoft was a good job. I enjoyed what I did. My team was great. I did a product management for the treasury team there. And I also helped to manage part of their portfolio, their internal investment capital. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot and everything was going really well, I think. But one thing that I kept on asking myself was, is this it? Like, what else do I want to do? Because, things get very routine and then years pass. And by the time you realize it, you're like, many years have passed. And I didn't want to become trapped into this cycle in some sense. And for whatever reason, I started getting interested into what do people regret when they die? And this was mid 2000s. A couple things popped up. One was that people wish they spend more time with their friends and family. They don't work as hard. And the other thing that they've kind of kept on messaging was, I wish I've taken more risks and it had a greater impact in my life on others. And for some reason, that really stuck with me. What I did at Microsoft was a lot of fun and I had a lot of personal and professional enjoyment out of it. But I wasn't able to answer the question, how does this impact others very well? Earning or helping to increase earnings per share wasn't sufficient. It felt like you're just making equity holders more rich. And while that may be enough for others, it wasn't for me. So I had to kind of take a step back, and going to business school was, I thought, a step that I could explore. I don't know how, but I got accepted to Stanford. I think I was very fortunate. A lot of people who are smart try to apply there, and I think a lot of it is luck, but I feel very grateful for that opportunity. During the 2 years at Stanford, I got exposed to a lot of people and ideas, and more than just investment management or product portfolio management. I didn't think about entrepreneurship going into Stanford, but through those years, I've kind of felt like this is something that could be fun to do. I was afraid of entrepreneurship, I think, beforehand because it felt very cloudy. Where do you begin? How do you start? What about the risks? How do you make money? And all that stuff. It just felt safer to take a job at a company that tells you what to do, but maybe make an impact. But the thing about entrepreneurship, I think that really grasped me was it was a really direct way to do whatever I wanted and help maybe figure out everything else along the way. For better or worse, there's no one to answer to. You make a decision and you go with it. And if it doesn't work out, you figure out a way to make it work. And I like that. So right after business school, a classmate and I, we started a restaurant gift card company. We did that for about 2 years and we got acquired by OpenTable. I took about almost a year to rest and think about what I wanted to do next. And I think this was when I was starting to really get into thinking about health and wellness and fitness. That part of me have always kind of been part of my life through college and intramural and high school sports. But I think one thing that I realized today, even with Keelo that I'm doing right now, is that as we grow up, it's around the late 20s, I'd say. Before that, people don't really think about health and wellness and fitness, for the lack of better reason, because I think you're still very young and your body is able to maintain itself without much effort, so to speak. And then we hit that late 20s stage, and then we realize things aren't working as well as we thought we would. So then we question, how do we maintain our health and well-being going forward? If I look at the fitness industry, a lot of it is not motivated by that long-term perspective of giving people the training and education to self-sustain themselves to be well and healthy in the future. Instead, it's a lot about quick flips, quick transactions. There's a lot of fads. There's a lot of gimmicks. I mean, we see that all the time in what used to be TV ads, now Instagram and Facebook. Everything's like a 5-week program, and then you're supposed to get these amazing results, or do a certain magical diet and then get immediate results. Well, the question then it becomes like, well, what do you do like after that? Like, do you keep doing these short-term iterations and hopefully they all work out at the end, or do you have a plan to sustain itself? There's nothing wrong with, I think, exploring different things along the way that one might like, whether it's like judo, swimming, running. But I think there needs to be a core rail of which people adhere to make sure that they have a long-term plan for making sure that their fitness and health are maintained. So that's one thing. Like, I don't think people had a long-term perspective about their health. And then two, a lot of these fitness things that are especially now about studios and things are quite expensive. If you attend a studio fitness class regularly, you can cost a couple $100 easily per month. For a lot of people, that's a lot of disposable income that they don't have. And I didn't want to create a service that only catered to the middle and upper class. I think fitness and being well is sort of a birthright. You should be able to do that. It shouldn't cost more money to do that, meaning a person who is low income should technically have the same ability and capability to maintain themselves as someone who's upper income. You don't need a $2,000 Peloton bike. I mean, if you want to do it, that's fine, but the message shouldn't be, this is the only way you get fit, by buying a $2,000 bike plus a $40 subscription. So the goal was to provide a product and service that enables people to maintain their long-term health and wellness and fitness at a price that anyone can afford. So that's what I'm working on now, Keelo.
You were in the CrossFit gym with me. Was that when you were thinking about the idea, or was that when you started the idea? I think we were in it a few years ago together.
The time at CrossFit Palo Alto and being coached by Tim and the staff there definitely had an impact, and a positive one. What I really liked about that experience was a sort of a theory around how to measure fitness and how to get fitter. I think for a large part, a lot of people don't understand that. They go to a gym like 24 Hour Fitness and they see a bunch of machines on the floor and they see a cardio section and machines, and then you're kind of left on your own, or you hire a personal trainer who will charge a lot of money, and then you're still kind of left on your own, right? What my CrossFit experience has done is kind of, through the practice of working out there, I got to learn sort of the underlying reasons why we do everything we do, how it all fits together, and not really just about really enjoying that journey, not just thinking about working out as an hour chore that I have to do every day in some sense. So now I think that whole fitness part of me is more like an identity rather than a thing that I think about that I have to do. It's something that I like to do, like sleeping or eating.
Keelo, I noticed in the app you have visual, like you could actually, is it in the app you could actually record yourself and then it actually has visual elements that show you how well you're performing some task?
The Keelo app right now is geared towards, I'd say two things. One is it's telling you what to do. So we don't want to have people think about, what do I do today at the gym? And I think a lot of people stumble on that because if you come from the bodybuilding world, you think you have different body parts. You have to work out different body parts, or you've got cardio versus strength. Dichotomy is that, in some sense, are, in my opinion, marketing terms to make fitness maybe harder than it has to be. So what we try to do is simplify all of that. You open up Keelo, we tell you exactly from warm up to cool down what to do, and you just do it. You don't have to think about your plan. And the programming of that is something that a lot of our members today really enjoy. And then two, like CrossFit, everything is measured and scored. So it's less about the competitiveness, but more as demonstration that you're getting better and you're getting fitter. Don't encourage measuring your fitness through just like aesthetics. I mean, aesthetics, I get it. It's important. Everyone likes to look good in front of a mirror, but there's very little relationship between aesthetics and your actual health and fitness. One can drive the other, but it's certainly not. Like, looking good doesn't mean you have a good cardiovascular system or good fitness. It just means you kind of look good in front of the mirror, and that's it. So we try to stay away from that. So we provide a way for people to measure their workouts and then measure their overall fitness.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from your users? I've heard of a lot of people say, getting enthusiastic about joining a gym and going for a couple weeks, but then getting busy with life and not kind of continuing. Does the app assist people in habit building to kind of motivate them to keep going back?
We don't try to be a fitness program for everybody, right? One thing that we try to tell people is if you like what we're doing, we'd love to have you and we like to keep working with you. But if this isn't for you, then we totally understand and we hope that you find a program that works. But for the people that do like our method of fitness, I think we tapped into sort of the intrinsic side of their motivation. They like seeing their fitness getting better. So they understand that by doing what Keelo tells them to do, they're seeing measurable and visual fitness results. And so it becomes this mechanism where intrinsically, I want to do more and I want to keep this up. It becomes less about, I want to work out so I can eat more calories, which I think a lot of people think about fitness as.
You built this from nothing. How did you do that? How did you get the resources? It takes a lot of fortitude to go down the path of being an entrepreneur. You probably had few resources. It looks like you have a really good, strong business background, so you understand the way that businesses operate. How did you go down that journey to create something from nothing?
Keelo is definitely a project of passion. My motivation for doing it is less about the financial upside, but it's really about the personal interest in seeing the impact that it's having on others. Maybe that sounds a little bit trite, but it's been a very hard journey, I think. And I think we're seeing some, as from a business point of view, it's some traction and growth, but it's definitely been a hard road, especially with a lot of, I would say, noise. If you go to the app store and you search for a fitness app, you're going to get thousands and thousands of apps, and being able to break through that somehow a little bit. Certainly others are doing better than us, but even just a little bit, I think it's taken a lot of work and effort to get there. The history of the company, we raised a little bit of money. I started with a co-founder. He unfortunately parted ways a couple years ago. And since then, today, it's primarily me doing the coding for the backend and iPhone. We recently had an Android developer. We're trying to find a replacement for him. And we have basically design contractors. So the team is very nimble, but we get a lot done.
Small team, but effective. I actually saw the app on the Apple App Store. I think it was maybe featured, but it was pretty high up there, highlighted. So kudos to you. That's really phenomenal to be featured and have such I'd call it an elite small team that's really focused on the product. What would you say the app, I was trying to figure out the app myself in terms of what it was really focusing on. And it didn't seem like it took an angle per se. Some apps take an angle towards just a biking app or a running app.
We're geared towards general strength and conditioning. So like CrossFit, we're trying to build that fundamental basis, health, strength, ability to move properly, from which you can then apply it to sports, going hiking, going outside, being able to walk around, long-term ability to sustain muscle mass. So rather than focusing on a specific aspect, I think we're focused on general strength and conditioning, general fitness.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what I was getting from it. And I guess there's so many I'd call it niche apps that you kind of hone in and say, this is an app just for push-ups. There's a whole movement towards this 7-minute workout. And there's a lot of, that's an angle a lot of these apps are taking, or a swimming app. For yourself, are there any life hacks with working out, or you're taking your own type of methodology and placing it into the app? When I met you, you were in extreme shape.
I mean, I use the app regularly myself. I mean, I'm a user of it for sure. And so a lot of features that I think would be cool or bugs I discover through using the app myself. And then we also have pretty good dialogue with our users. Gratitude that they're giving us all these suggestions for what they want from the app, because it gives me encouragement that they are engaging with the app and they actually want to see it get better. One thing that I wouldn't want to see is absolute silence from my users. It's better to hear that they hate the app than nothing, because if you hear nothing, that means that there's really no opportunity to re-engage them.
If people are logging in every day, you've done something really interesting.
On that note, what is the scale of traction you've been able to accomplish so far?
We've got thousands of paying members right now, when the business is able to sustain itself. We're not making a ton of money, but it's paying the bills and it is profitable.
Is it a subscription model? They pay monthly, a couple dollars?
It's a subscription model, and they can pick whether they want to pay monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Going back to the affordability part, the app right now is, if you pay monthly, $13 a month. a year, it's $100. And then we also offer discounts to people in public service, whether that's teachers, military, firefighters, law enforcement.
What type of marketing have you done to get those users?
Not a lot. We do, in terms of any paid marketing, we do ads on Facebook, Instagram. A lot of our growth, people who are subscribers come from others telling about Keelo.
I was just curious if you had tried an institutional approach on sales, like trying to get whole football teams or something to sign on, or if it's just kind of individual users signing up.
We haven't tried that yet. It's possible. It's just that I think there's two parts of it that I kind of think about. One is who are our users, and I think our users are everybody, less so about being specific to a certain type of field, sports or category like that. And then two, at some level, it's just faster and more efficient to reach the end user than going through institutional gatekeepers in some sense. Like whether it's a company or organization, it just leads to longer sales cycles. That time is something that I unfortunately don't have. It's just, I would rather spend that developing more features and pushing them out to our users who are ultimately going to be the end users anyway, right? So whether you work at a company, I can reach you through Facebook or Instagram or through word of mouth. I don't have to reach you through the company.
Do you have any kind of moonshot goals, sort of a 10x type thinking that you're aiming for?
That's a good question. I think the opportunity is really big. The question that I have, though, is sort of a market question, and that's, is it possible that people can change the way they think about fitness? I don't know the answer to that, actually. I'm hoping that they will, but for example, will people ever get around the idea that fitness is simply a means to an end to eat more cupcakes? Or is it just about getting big biceps and big chest or big butt, and everything else doesn't matter because you don't see it? Those are, I think, very lizard brain methods of how people think, like meaning it's very, very distinctive, not very deep thoughts about what fitness really is. And I don't know if that's possible to get around.
What would you view as the healthy way of thinking of fitness? Is it sort of about longevity, people's energy and how they feel? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, I would measure it kind of in two ways for most people. Competitors aside, so for normal people, I think fitness can be kind of measured in two ways. One is the years of physical independence. We want to maximize that. One point of view that I have is, living long isn't necessarily the goal. The goal is to live long and physically independent. Whether you're 70 or 80, I want those people to be able to move and be independent. They don't need a caregiver. They don't need help to get up and down the toilet or stairs. We want you to be able to be independent. And then related to that, throughout your life, we want you to be able to do what you want to do physically. So whether it's going for a long hike, going on vacation, being able to lift heavy furniture because you're moving, you should be able to do all of that. It shouldn't be about, oh, I don't have the body to do that, so I'm going to give up. I don't see a reason why that's the case. Like there is a way to do that. I would say physical independence and being able to do things physically are two ways to look at fitness.
So it sounds like you're not into the extremist workout, the runners who run 26-mile
marathoners?
Yeah. Or bodybuilders who are pushing on extreme weight. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think that's a bad thing? Or you're indifferent?
I don't have a point of view on that. I mean, if people like what they do, and they should do it, right? Like if you want to run marathons and you enjoy that process, like I think you should. But what I don't think is the right thing is take someone who's never really ran before and they're not in shape. And so they make a goal, hey, I should get fit, so I'm going to run a marathon. That journey, I think, is incorrect. Marathon running isn't necessarily something that I would encourage as an ends to a mean to get fitter. I think it leads to more injuries and more long-term damage, but that's sort of the education process that I'm struggling with. And I think a lot of people are facing too, is the messaging of how do you teach fitness to people who don't really know it.
Could you tell me more about like the development of the app? I think you had mentioned that like you're doing some of the programming yourself. I also saw on your LinkedIn you had done the AI Coursera class. So it sounds like you've developed some software development skills. How does that go for you?
So my background in undergrad was in engineering, part computer science, part electrical engineering. The degree had a different name, but what we learned was basically those two things. So developing the app, basically got familiar with programming again. We use Python for the back end and Swift for the iPhone app. All of our stuff is in the cloud. So from a development point of view, it was just a lot of brute work, just figuring out what we needed to do and getting it done. We've got an algorithm that looks at your entire workout history And the algorithm is constantly getting better, but it looks at your history, makes sure how do we balance various different factors, and recommends a list of workouts for you with scores. So the sort of the AI part of it is confidence levels, like, right? So if you look at an image, the AI engine will give you a percent confidence of what this image is. So sort of taking that approach with workouts, right? So the AI thinks this workout has this percent confidence that this is your next best workout. So that's how it recommends what you should do next.
And then the other developers you work with, like, are they in the US or are they overseas? I know it's really expensive to hire developers around here.
Well, right now, developer is just me at the moment. So it's here. But previously, they're all based in the US.
Wow. So you're the only developer and you've got an app with like thousands of users that are paying? That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think the product kind of speaks for itself, and I'm able to move quickly if things break or if I want to make a change. And it's really cool to see that instant feedback. Just like this week, I'm working on a new feature that I thought something that our users would like, and hopefully I'll get it out this weekend.
Have you thought about outsourcing, like using Upwork or something to find other people to help out?
Definitely certain parts of the business, but I would think developers would be someone that I would want to hire as part of a full-time team. And I am considering remote hiring just because the cost of developers here in the Bay Area has become really expensive.
What about customer support? How does that kind of work get done?
It's basically everything's funneling to me right now. So I take them in chunks. So I've got my days split out where during this time of the day, I do certain different things. And so I field those questions myself. But it's good because I get to see exactly what our users want to do, or what they like, what they don't like, what they want to see next.
That's awesome. That sounds a lot of work, but you have sort of full control over the whole business and product, which is kind of empowering.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't have my hope is if Keelo gets bigger, we'll be able to have a bigger team to do everything. So by no means do I want to do this indefinitely all by myself, but it's just sort of where we are today.
How did it go with your partner that you started the business with?
Yeah, I mean, we both had our interests in fitness, and I think we shared a common value of wanting to do something that was world positive, meaning like we were able to contribute something to people. Making money would have been great, but that was secondary to making an impact. And we worked on it together for a long time. And I think it was just at a certain point, other commitments came up, and understandably, and so yeah, it was just time to part ways.
You decided to continue on. I'm sure you were debating, this is hard. Do I keep going?
Yeah, it was a really hard time. My wife and I, we just had our first kid at around that same time. So a lot was happening. It took about a week, really. It didn't take that much time, but it took about a week to figure out would I want to continue it or not. But ultimately decided to continue it with a stipulation that I would give it a year to see if I can do this. And if I couldn't, then I would have to figure out a different plan. But fortunately, during that year, things worked out.
So you said early on that you raised seed money?
Not seed money as it is today in the world, but like a couple $100,000.
That's still a good amount. I think that's significant to get something started and off the ground.
Yeah, they would call that pre-seed nowadays.
Are you looking like in the future potentially for other investors, or is it at a point where you're like, this is the revenue growth is good, the growth is good, I could keep it going the way it is and not take on more investors or take on more, like what's your end goal at this point? To like grow it fast? Generally with investors, you grow fast.
So I'm definitely not ruling it out. I think though there would be a reason why I would want to raise money. And that is I would want to raise money if it helps us grow faster, meaning there was a clear path of how to crank the engine faster. I wouldn't want to raise money to discover what to do next. Like I think a lot of entrepreneurs raise money to buy them time to figure out what to do next to make a product. The purpose of what I would want to raise money for, I would only want to raise it to feed the growth engine somehow.
So you're looking to take what you have and not pivot with a raise.
Yeah.
You didn't mention this, but looking at your LinkedIn profile, way back when you did something with the military, did that kick off
Yeah.
this whole health, I'd call it like journey for you?
During my undergrad, I think my junior year, I wasn't sure if the military was something that I would like or not, but I was always curious about it. And so I decided to give officer candidate schools for the Marines a shot. It was a 10-week program where basically boot camp for officers, candidates. And at the end of it, if you made it through, you can accept or decline your commission. So it was not binding when you got in, but you can decide afterwards. But I thought it was a great experience to learn. And I have zero regrets. I've learned a ton about myself and respect for the people who do serve. I definitely have really good memories of that. And I think it's definitely shaped who I am today. I think it's only related to fitness because it involved fitness, but I don't think that was sort of the creation of why I'm doing today what I am.
What other tools or tricks do you use to keep yourself healthy? Like, for example, I recently bought an Aura ring, and it's been like tracking my sleep and helping, like, giving me feedback on how I'm doing with my sleep. Or is there anything like that you use?
Not really. I don't know if that's good or bad, but generally I enjoy working out. And I think one way that I make sure that I get personal encouragement is like in CrossFit, for example, there are certain benchmark workouts that you do repeatedly, not all the time, but every once in a while. And you can measure your score on them. And so it's motivating to see that continuously improving, even if it's a couple seconds here or there, but it tells me that I'm getting fitter and at least I'm not losing my fitness as I'm getting older. I'm able to lift more, so I have more strength. So just like these broad measurements that I'm taking of my workouts and seeing them going up gives me encouragement to continue to go.
Does your app have a kind of a tracking capability like that? Like, is the user inputting sort of how they did in their workout?
So all the workouts are defined, right? So one thing, for example, that we get a lot of requests is the ability to create their own workouts. And we tend to shy away from that a little bit because we spend a lot of time designing a workout. Like every workout that's in Keelo has a purpose. It's not just to like get your heart racing like super fast. That would be a horrible workout. Rather, we think about all the different muscle parts, body parts you're using, different energy systems that you're tapping into, the relationship between rest and work. So all these things are being considered when we design a workout. And so that kind of defines that experience. Like people don't think about it, right? They just do it. But sort of the recipe of what you're doing has been well thought out. So, but when you use the app, all of that is tracked for you. And then in addition to when we have our strength workouts, a lot of people question like, well, what weight should I do next? So we look at your history and we determine based upon like what you're able to do in the past, what you should try to attempt for your next lift. So we're incrementally pushing you on that boundary. So if left to your own devices, you might not push yourself as hard, but we know you in some sense. So we're able to give you a little bit more encouragement to make you try a little bit more. And, I'd say 95 out of 100 times you're going to be able to do it, but you necessarily wouldn't have done it if we didn't give you that suggestion.
So AI is really determining. That's really interesting. So is there a point where a person would stop recommending weight? Is there like a...
Yeah. So you tell us what you did, right? So let's say we recommended like 5 reps at 200 pounds, and let's say you're only able to do 4 reps at 200 pounds because the last one didn't work. Then you enter in 4 at 200 reps or 200 pounds. Then we use that to readjust everything. So the next time you do it, we sort of build up that basis again, but at a little bit of a lower level. So you get your more development. So yeah, we try to really take away the thinking part of it and just tell you what to do because that's what our users want.
What's your own personal ritual as far as like exercising? Like, do you tend to do it in the morning, like when you wake up, and then?
I usually work out in the afternoon or evening. I'm just not a morning person, and I know there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, not just with fitness, but like, you should do this in the morning, you should do it in the evening. And that really matters. It might matter like very marginally. And like, I think what really matters more is like, you do it, right? Like, so do you work out? That's number one. First order of magnitude question. And that'll probably move like 95% of your results. The 5% or less will probably comes from the timing, sort of with nutrition, right? So you hear a lot about like, oh, I should eat carbs right after a workout or protein right after a workout. And at some level, yes, but the 95% movement is like your overall nutrition, right? Like, how do you eat overall? Forget timing for a second.
I'm looking here and it says only 22% of Americans are physically active, and that's from Google.
It's pretty low. The biggest opportunity is getting them to move and be active again, I think. And it's really hard.
You're competing with television and other things that just kind of make you sit more, right? So that there's a lot of that where if it's only 20, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, there's a pessimistic side of me that thinks like, humans are just going to evolve into these, bodiless organisms that just have like the capacity to think, and that's it. Because we're just like not doing anything with our bodies anymore over time. But hopefully that's not going to happen.
I read one study that Stanford did with, I think it was Stanford students, and they were physically walking, and it created more creative idea thought patterns for those individuals. And I actually think it's a really dark future if we get to that point and people are not, at that point, I think people are not thinking as much. Question I have for you, and this is curiosity. Greg went to Stanford, you went to Stanford, you went to the Stanford Business School. Tell us, what's one thing you got out of that you really value?
I don't know if there's one thing. I mean, there's a couple, for sure, things that do pop into mind. Certainly the different types of people that I've met, the connections that I've made, the friends that I've made, very valuable. Just being open to more ideas. I think that was something that, even right now, I wish I had access to at some level, right? Like, so there's so many different things that people are working on, so many different ways people look at things that I miss a lot, being exposed to that today. But something that I really valued when I was at Stanford. What I'm doing now is my world is very, there are things that I try to explore here and there, but it's still very much along the lanes of fitness and programming. It would be great to get more ideas, or time to explore more ideas at least.
There was a lot of free thought. And right now you're building a company. It's a lot of focused, hard programming.
Yeah. And, I think my wife and I, we have a son now. And so any free time we have is sort of like, we want to spend it with him and making sure that he's properly nurtured and exposed to different things. So the hours in the day are very few.
Yes, I also have a son, so I have a son, and I can relate.
If you were to give a talk for 10 minutes at a TED conference, what would you speak about?
I am passionate about health, fitness, giving people more confidence about themselves through fitness, something along those lines.
What's one book that you recommend, or at least stuck with you throughout the years that you really enjoyed?
Or have given away as a gift to someone?
Maybe not a book, but I think one thing that I would want to communicate is I think it's okay to figure out what people want to do that they enjoy and find more time to do that. I just get this impression that a lot of what people do comes out of obligation rather than what they want to try out and do themselves. And I think it leads to jobs that they don't like, things they do they don't like, and even like workouts they don't enjoy, because things are taken from the point of view of obligation. And I think if people look at it from the point of view of what do I actually enjoy doing and how do I enable myself to do more of that, I think it could be a more fulfilling way to approach the day in some sense. Like, it may not be the most fun thing to do all the time, but at least you're doing it out of your heart rather than feeling like you have to do it because you have to do something that you don't want to do.
If you were to talk to yourself when you were 20 years old, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
Say two things. One, don't measure my life on external achievements. This is something that I've reflected on a lot. Like, my parents, again, thought these things mattered a lot. And I guess I don't blame them, but like, the number of degrees I got or the number of like things I've owned or how much money I've accumulated, these external measures of things And measuring myself against that, like, I think hurt me for a long time. Like in undergrad, for example, I spent way too much time, I think, studying because I wanted to get more degrees. I think it was really more hurtful than beneficial. So that's one thing, not to measure myself against external things like that. And then two, this is a very trite thing to say, but don't be motivated by the biggest salary of a job in the job, because I think that just leads to like measuring yourself against other people, not measuring yourself against like things that you enjoy and what I enjoy.
Sage advice.
Yeah, I mean, I still am vulnerable to it myself today. I mean, for sure, but I keep trying to remind myself what really matters.
Would you give your son that same advice?
When I was growing up, getting the best grades mattered, getting the best schools mattered. What didn't matter was discovering what I liked, right? Like, so everything I did was sort of I love my parents, but maybe they're a little bit helicopterish. Like, they told me like, yeah, these are the things you need to do to get to this milestone, and then you get to this milestone, like that's the next milestone. Like, never really giving me the space to ask why, like, why do I need to do this, or do I really want to do it? With our kids, if we have more than our son, like, for sure, I want them to grow up with that attitude, more of like figuring out and exploring a breadth of things to determine like what is it that they enjoy doing, and giving them more encouragement to pursue that.